Hey gang, Sam Ward here, and we are making some biblical connections. That's right, I'm reading through the Bible in a year, and I'm loving seeing the connections between the Old and the New Testament. Today, we're in Deuteronomy and the book of Luke. It's amazing. We have a God who was and who is to come. In other words, he was there before time began. He is here with us now, and he's also waiting for us in the future. He is eternal. But what does that mean for us? Well, it's amazing when you start to look at Old and New Testament, you start to see connections. The God who was and who is to come. And you have this thing called the Old and the New Covenant, right? So the Old Covenant was the sacrificial system that God gives through Moses, and then you have this new covenant that Jesus brings through his death and his resurrection. It's amazing to see some connections. What also happens is because God is eternal, he tells us sometimes what's going to happen. He knows, he can see it, and he tells us exactly what's going to happen, but we don't get it. And we're going to see that both in Deuteronomy and the book of Luke. But here's what is true. We can trust him. He is eternal grace and mercy for us. He's the most trustworthy person in the universe. We can trust him, and we're going to see that, I think, today. So, Deuteronomy 30, verse 1. This is the story where Moses is coming to the end of his life. He's given the people all of these commandments, and God tells them, and when all of these things come upon you, the blessing and the curse. In other words, when you go into the promised land, he's already told them, you're going to go into the promised land, and you're going to fall away. You're not going to obey. So when these things happen, all of the blessings and all of the curses, which I have set before you, and you call them to mind. And then he goes on to say that it's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when that day comes. In other words, God is telling them, I'm taking you into the promised land. You're not there yet. You're going to experience the blessing, and then you're going to fall away, and then you're going to experience the curses. When that happens, I will bring you back, and I will bless you even more. That's what God says. It's phenomenal. And we see that for the rest of the Old Testament, right? So then Jesus basically says the same thing in Luke 18:34. I read Deuteronomy and then I flipped right to Luke 18. And here Jesus explains his coming death and resurrection to his disciples. But they, that's his disciples, understood none of these things. This saying was hidden from them, and they did not grasp what was said. And we know that he died and he rose again. And his disciples had no idea that he was going to rise again after 3 days. We see this with the disciples on the road to Emmaus. They said, are you the only one who doesn't know about what happened to Jesus? He's dead. And the risen Jesus is the one talking with them. It's hilarious and ironic, and then he opens their eyes. So Jesus is the fulfillment of the old covenant, and he's also the embodiment of the new covenant. He is the key to understanding both covenants, in other words. So some things are fulfilled and done after the death and the resurrection of Jesus, and some things carry over from the old. So, for example, the new covenant is also, this is a quote from Deuteronomy, for whoever is standing here with us today before the Lord our God, and with whoever is not here with us today. That's straight out of Deuteronomy. So the covenant is for those of us who believe and those who have not believed yet. It's amazing to see that straight out of Deuteronomy. Jesus also knew that the Israelites in the Old Testament and the followers that were standing there before him in the New Testament and us would all fail. We are not perfect and we fall into sin. Jesus knew this, and yet for the joy set before him, he endured the cross for us, for the world. It doesn't always play out this way. But I'm praying this prayer from Deuteronomy. This happens in 29:29, right before the passage that we've been looking at. It says that there can be faith lived out for us and for our children, those who are to come. And so this is my prayer for my children and for all of those who haven't yet met Jesus, that the things that are revealed belong to us and to our children forever.